Along the Columbia River in the 1940s, there was a need to control floods and generate power. This led, in the 60s and 70s, to 4 dams being built and reservoirs created under the Columbia River Treaty. People living in the Columbia Basin did not feel adequately consulted. Communities were flooded, people displaced, First Nations traditional territory lost, and ecosystems forever altered. In the early 1990s, residents, local officials, and representatives from 5 regional districts and the Ktunaxa Nation Council joined together to coordinate efforts to seek recognition from the province of the impacts of the treaty dams. They were successful, and in July 1995, the province passed the Columbia Basin Trust Act. The region would receive a one-time share of the downstream benefits earned under the Columbia River Treaty, and a regional organization would manage the endowment on behalf of basin residents, Columbia Basin Trust. The idea was to create a self-sufficient organization to benefit present and future generations. The trust serves the area most affected by the 4 treaty dams, the region consisting of all the watersheds that flow into the Columbia River in Canada. It operates in the unceded traditional territories of the Ktunaxa, the Lheidli, the Secwepemc, the Sinixt, and the Syilx peoples. These are a few key sections from the Columbia Basin Trust Act. Whereas the desires of the people of the Columbia Basin were not adequately considered in the original negotiations of the Columbia River Treaty, and whereas the government desires to include the people of the Columbia Basin in decisions that affect their lives and determine their future, and whereas the government intends to work with the people of the Columbia Basin to ensure that benefits derived from the Columbia River Treaty help to create a prosperous economy with a healthy, renewed natural environment. Although the Trust is a provincial Crown corporation, its goals and priorities are set in consultation with Basin residents and captured in the Columbia Basin Management Plan. The Trust has a high level of independence and autonomy from the province and does not relieve any level of government of their obligations in the region. The Trust has 2 core functions. First, to invest capital and manage the assets of the Trust. Second, to use the income earned from the Trust's investments to deliver benefits in the basin. The Trust received a one-time endowment of $321 million from the province in 1995, $276 million to finance regional hydropower construction, and $45 million in unrestricted funds. The Trust also received $2 million per year for the first 16 years for operations. There was to be no ongoing funding. The Trust was expected to be self-sufficient. The Trust co-owns 4 hydropower facilities in the region in partnership with Columbia Power Corporation. Brilliant Dam and Generating Station was purchased, and Arrow Lakes, Brilliant Expansion, and Juanita Expansion were built. However, the endowment wasn't enough to finance the projects, and money had to be borrowed. The Trust owns these hydropower facilities 50-50 with Columbia Power Corporation. Columbia Power's share of the income flows back to the province and therefore to all residents of BC. The Trust share flows back to the region. The revenues are variable from year to year. The Trust always keeps in mind the principles of a prudent investor and the balance between risk and returns. The goal is to seek a predictable, sustainable, and appreciating return. This reflects our first core function. If the Trust's assets were basin residents, then this is how many would be in hydropower. This is how many would be in business loans and real estate. And this is how many would be in market securities. The Trust uses this money to repay debt, reinvest in power facilities, reinvest in general investment opportunities, return benefits to the region, and to operate the organization. How the Trust uses the funds to benefit the region is based on input from people in the basin. The Trust also balances this against other important considerations, such as the requirement for self-sufficiency, the reality of finite resources, and a respect of diverse basin values. What residents can expect from the Trust, as captured in the Act, is to prudently manage its investments to maintain a self-sustaining organization for the benefit of this region today and for future generations. Residents can also expect to be consulted on the Columbia Basin Management Plan. The Trust is committed to the principles of the Trust creation and remains accountable to residents as the beneficiaries of its work and to the province as its shareholder. However, residents shouldn't expect that the Trust can do everything, solve societal challenges, provide constant and forever funding, or relieve other levels of government of their obligations. With so many factors and other considerations, such as finite resources and diverse values, trade-offs must be made as priorities are set. This is no easy task. But by taking guidance from how the trust came to be, by remaining unified and forward-looking, it's possible. One unified region, one trust.